Okay, boys and girls, I know it's been a rough week. You guys have been working hard. This should really sum up everything that you've been doing in class. So what I want you to do is there's 3 questions right here on the board, and I want you to make sure you remember, and there's an M. This is just an M right here. Remember, the question is to factor, so you're not going to be able to solve any of these. So what I want you to do is pause the video, and I want you to just complete these 3 problems, and as soon as you're done, hit play again, and then I'll go through and show you exactly what I did, and let's compare to make sure that you did it right. So go ahead, pause the video, and do them. Alright, so now that you did them, the first one, the very first thing I'm going to notice is it's a special trinomial. You have ax squared plus bx plus c. So, but I do know that they share a common factor. But you can't just divide everything by that. So I am going to factor out, I notice that they all share a 3. So when I factor out a 3, I'm left with 3r squared plus 5r plus 2. And sometimes that may be it. But in this case, I'm going to check to see if this part couldn't be factored even further. And let me use a different color. And going on. Alright, so this is one of those special trinomials, but the number in front is not a 1. So I'm going to have to multiply a and c and get 6. I'm looking for the factors of 6, positive 6, that add to 5. And that would be 3 and 2. So now I'm going to take this and I'm going to rewrite it as a 4-term polynomial. I'm going to just draw an arrow so I don't forget about my 3. But this part and this part only breaks down into 3r squared. I'm going to bring down my 2. And then I'm breaking up my 5r into plus 3r plus 2r. Now I'm going to group these 2 together and take out the greatest common factor, which is 3r. And I'm left with r plus 1. Here the greatest common factor is a 2. And I'm left with r plus 1. So now I can rewrite this as my factors, the stuff on the inside, because it's the same. R plus 1 times 3r plus 2. And now, I see my arrow right here. I can't forget to bring my 3 out front. And these are, this expression actually has 3 factors, this times this times this. And that's as far as I can go. That's the factored form. Number 2, no greatest common factor. I notice it's a special trinomial. And even better, the number in front of the x squared is a 1, because there's nothing there, so you consider it to be a 1. Well, I don't have to go through all of these steps. I can just factor it into my 2 binomials. The variable in the front to get x squared is x times x, and I'm looking for my factors of 9 that add to negative 10. Well, I have to get 2 things that multiply to a positive and add to a negative, so I know that I'm looking for 2 negative numbers, and those negative numbers would be negative 1 times negative 9. Times negative 9 times negative 1. And when you add those, you do get negative 10. Those are my factors, and I'm done. Because of this type of trinomial is very easy to factor. Number 3, it's not a trinomial, but you can take out the greatest common factor, which is 2m, and you're left with 2m minus 1. And that is your factored form. Alright, moving on to the next problems. Alright, so for these 3 problems, I want you to pause the video. That's a 7 right there, down here, don't forget this guy. And I want you to do these problems and try to solve for x. Pause it, and then when you are done, just hit play and we'll go through them. Alright, so now that you tried them and make sure you did, let's go ahead and factor these. Because I noticed that for each problem, it's in the first one, I have a quadratic. So my first rule is it has to equal 0. So I'm going to add 18 to both sides, and I'm going to get 2x squared plus 12x plus 18 equals 0. Well, before I start, I notice it's a trinomial, and it's one of those special trinomials, but they all are even numbers. And instead of factoring out a 2, I can divide this entire thing by 2, because I'm going to do it on both sides. And I'm going to end up with x squared plus 6x plus 9 equals 0. Now that was great for me, because now there's not even a number in front of the x squared term, so the a equals 1. Well, because of that, I can factor this side of the equation. I'm looking for the factors of 9 that add to 6. So that's positive 3, positive 3. And now I can set each one of these equal to 0. But because they're the same thing, I'm only going to set one of them equal to 0. And I get that x equals a negative 3. The other one would also equal negative 3. Number 2. Again, I notice I have a quadratic. Have to get it equal to 0. I'm going to move those over by adding 15 on both sides and then subtracting 11t. I'm going to write it in descending order. And unfortunately, the last one had a greatest common factor. This does not. So I'm going to have to use, in chapter 9.4, factoring this type of trinomial, multiply the first and last terms. So I get 30. I'm looking for the factors of 30 that add to negative 11. So maybe it's actually it's negative 6 and negative 5, because that multiplies to positive 30 but adds to negative 11. So I'm going to bring down my ax squared, bring down my c, still equals 0, and then I'm breaking up negative 11 into negative 6t, negative 5t. Now I'm going to group, and the greatest common factor of this binomial is 2t. I'm left with t minus 3. The greatest common factor of this one is a 3, and I'm left with negative, 5, and I'm left with negative 3t plus 5 equals 0. Well, negative t plus 5 equals 0. Well, here I have t minus 3, and here, you know what, I apologize. Let me go ahead and erase this. Here we go. Now, when I factor out, I'm going to factor out a 5, and I'm left with negative t, and 15 divided by 5 is positive 3. Now, inside the parentheses, you pretty much have opposites. So the way that we can change that is we'll leave the first one the same, and I'm going to go ahead and change everything in the inside to its opposite, and then change everything on the outside to its opposite. And that means you're getting the same answer, but now you have the same thing written inside the parentheses. So I have 2t minus 5 times t minus 3 equals 0. And if I set each one of these equal to 0, I will get t equals positive 3 as one of my answers. And here I ran out of room, but I will get t equals 5 over 2, or 2.5 is also acceptable. Last one I'm going to go ahead and do in green, so all the way down here. First of all, it's still a quadratic, so I'm going to move the 21s over and get me 7s squared minus 21s equals 0. Now to factor this side, I'm just going to take out the greatest common factor. It's a binomial. So the greatest common factor is 7s, and left inside, still equals 0, is s minus 3. I ran out of room, but if I now set this equal to 0, 7s equals 0, I get 0 as one of my answers. And if I set this equal to 0 and solve, I get s equals positive 3. And there are those answers.